you must have been seeing Havlicek and all those guys there. Yeah, right. Right, I'm just checking. This must have been when Tommy was tailing off.
Kettle calling something.
Then they tailed off and they burned him.
That's it.
The May 19th Auburn City Council workshop will be called to order. The first item is proposed ordinance amendment related to vacant properties. Mr. Bowden and Mr. Cousins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. Eric Cousins, Public Services Director, and Chris Bowden to my left. Chris has been taking a lead on drafting this ordinance and is here to give an overview.
So we spent a little time, well, a lot of time working on this. And, you know, the more I think about it and the more I look into this in other municipalities, I really only see a lot of positive impacts, not a lot of negative impacts with doing a vacant building registration. A couple of things that, you know, I wanted to note right off. I think we're going to, if we do this, we'd have a lot more neighborhood awareness. A lot of these residents here don't know where these vacant buildings are. So when people are going in and out of them and they don't belong, it might be a little bit easier for staff, emergency personnel, first responders to understand that these buildings are maybe broken into or whatnot. The other thing that I really do like about this is it will require inspections when we're doing, we're issuing these permits and the renewals. We can get in these buildings, make sure they're not deteriorating, which hopefully will kind of stop some of these dangerous building presentations that we have to do, which in the long run would save money because we're not spending $40,000, $50,000 to tear down a building when, you know, we're watching these buildings become maintained. Another positive impact is it may incentivize owners to actually put some of these units back in service. We have, and not just residential, we might have some old buildings that were used as offices. Investors may take notice and want to convert those into residential buildings too. I mean, we do have a housing crisis, and this is a perfect opportunity to be able to incentivize these property owners to put these back in service. So in doing this, you'll see some of the track changes. We've gone back and forth a little bit and wanted some input as to anything you all would like to see in this, or yeah, any of your input really.
Questions or comments from the council? Council Platt.
I apologize if I missed any of the numbers in here, but how many properties would this currently affect in the city of Auburn, roughly, approximately?
We don't know exactly. We don't have a good way to track and register vacant buildings. This would give us a lot of that information. Census data from the housing study is saying that there could be as much as 6 or 7% of the units in Auburn that are vacant. That would put us at, you know, over 500 units, not necessarily buildings, but we don't know exactly what's out there because we don't currently have a way to track them.
And we do get asked from time to time if we do have a registry, people, you know, for general knowledge, or investors that are looking for properties to convert into residential dwellings. So it'd be nice to be able to provide folks with this information.
And as we looked at other ordinances, some require a check-in or a re-registry every 6 months or every 12 months, depending on the ordinance. I think there's value in having the shorter time frame, so we're maintaining contact with that owner, making sure contact information is current. And then one of the other biggest differences between this and what you'll see in the other example communities that we used as a model is we wanted to make sure that more of our costs for sort of the high impact, larger buildings are able to be covered by by the registration fee. So it doesn't apply to every building, but if a large building becomes vacant, it's a higher hazard to the community, and we have to spend more time and resources making sure that it stays safe. So we wanted to cover that distinction, and I don't think you'll find that in other ordinances.
Other questions or comments? Councilor Whiting.
Do we know how many of these buildings, or have a hazard a guess on how many would be owned by like out-of-state banks? That, you know, you have local banks that finance a property, but then they sell their mortgages off to some distant, you know, banking.
We really don't,
organization.
and that is one of the challenges that we have, because the amount of time it takes to contact, you know, these banks, we spend a lot of time and a lot of resources trying to reach out. This would, you know, eliminate a lot of that by having all this contact information, and even when we do reach out, we find the entity that, you know, that is holding on to the property. They don't want to provide us with direct phone numbers, email addresses. It's a challenge.
Councilor Mills? Yeah. Go ahead, Councilor Cowell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When you were looking at these codes from the other cities, did you talk to anyone? And because you raised some what I think are very viable potential positives for us. Did you hear from any of those municipalities? If
No, we
that's the
haven't.
case?
Yeah.
I did speak with Matt Nazar in Augusta about Augusta's ordinance, and he said overall it's been positive. You can never know for sure that you have every building registered. You continue to find them over time, but it's been overall positive to have that contact information.
Thank you. That's all.
Councilor Mills?
How long is the permit valid for? Is it 60 to 90?
Well, so
Valid
this,
6 months, and
this
then we
one
double
is-
it after 6 months?
correct,
And then double it again after another 6 months?
correct.
So if it's vacant, if they're upkeeping the building and they're just keeping it vacant, you could see somebody getting a $1,600 to $3,600 fee every 6 months if they go 2 years?
So,
I have thought of that.
That's how it's written, right?
Pardon me?
That's how it's written?
Correct.
so,
Correct.
so I might be able to enlighten this a little bit, because I had the same question. So I ran the numbers out over a 5-year period. So the first thing I would say is I don't think the period of 6 months or the doubling is unusual. I talked to the mayor and the city manager in Sanford, Augusta, Bangor. They were all very positive about this and got positive results. So I think these are in line, but I'm worried that there's no cap at any point. So as an example, the $100 fee at 6 months, doubling every 6 months, when you get to the end of the 5th year, it's $51,200 for a 6-month period, right? Because it keeps escalating. And on the 400, I didn't do the ones where, you know, we're adding $100 for the extra square foot, but just on a 400, it's $204,000 at the end of year 5. So at some point, the escalation will help motivate the owners to do something with the building, but it seems like at some point we should have a cap, because if you don't, it seems like they're gonna get a little high. So, you know, I would suggest we think about that, and, you know, on the $100 one, you know, year 4's 12.8, maybe cap it at 12,000, and maybe cap the other one at 50,000 or something, so that it doesn't just keep escalating forever. We can talk about what the number is, but I think a concept of a cap, at some point, out some number of years, you know, you're still gonna have to keep paying that amount every 6 months, but the doublings, you're gonna get to a very high number once you get out after the 5-year period. Councilor Mills?
Yeah, I mean, and I'm thinking about this, I mean, I can think of a number of commercial buildings that I've seen that have been vacant for quite a period of time that weren't a blight, that then were occupied again. And to me, if it's, I mean, if it's not a blight and an owner of a building keeps it up, pays the taxes, wants to pay the electricity, and wants to keep it vacant, that's their prerogative. I don't see why we as a city should be able to charge them an escalating fee that could, could end up being a big number just because I choose to keep my building vacant for a little while. Or what could have happened is the building became vacant, but they're still getting a lease payment. They could be getting that a business left, but they're fulfilling the lease. A national company was in there and then they leave, and it could be vacant for 2 years, and that person's collecting rent on it and keeping up the property. So I think there's room in there for contingencies or other. I think blighted property, we want to be able to get rid of the blighted property. So just some thoughts there.
Council Whiting.
Going to suggest, and sort of in line with what Councilor Milk said, that maybe there's a waiver procedure or something to sort of stop the process if there's some commercial reason for their not being able to rent it. It's just unmarketable currently, or the other thing I think is what you hope with this is that they would come in and negotiate, and they're starting to make promises like we see with these buildings that we've had to condemn or threaten to condemn, where they actually, you put them on a timeline and maybe you suspend the fee for a time as long as they're making progress, and then they come in and pull a permit and they're gonna do all the things that you need, then you've achieved your objective.
Council Whiting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councilor Milk's statement. I have a hard time with, if they're up keeping their building, but the individual has the freedom to, if they don't want to rent it or they don't want to do something with it, that's them. But they should be maintaining the outside of their building. If it's maintained, there's no issues outside. They don't want to rent it, that's their choice. But we shouldn't be telling them you have to do something with it. As long as they're keeping the outside, and things upkept, I'm fine with that.
I'd also, there are buildings that are in foreclosure, because, a single family or a two family that's in foreclosure, it's very hard to even get in touch with the bank about those. Are we charging, are we gonna fine the banks?
Yeah, those are in here.
That is part of it.
They're in the definitional section under abandoned building.
And they probably make up most of the buildings that we have that
Right.
trouble with too. You call
So
the
are
mortgage
we charging the banks those fees then?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, we call the mortgage company that has a mortgage registered at their registry, and they tell us, oh, we sold that package of loans to so-and-so, and you call them, and it's not in our books, we sold that package of loans to so-and-so, and the
And there's
recording is still a couple of owners, a couple of mortgage holders.
So if me, buyer, and then a person comes along, it goes through the foreclosure, it gets released out into the marketplace. The bank says, we're not paying it. Are we gonna then move that fine and put it onto the person that buys it? Like, if the bank just says, we're not paying it, because that's what they're already taking a loss.
Yeah, there is a process that we can take those overdue fees and go through the court system and end up with a writ or a lien against the property.
So then the owner, the person that wants to buy that property, would end up having to pay those fees.
Yeah, but they should see that recording when they're making the decision.
But
And the city could
So
negotiate.
inevitably, that's gonna keep that property vacant further.
Well, that's the exact opposite of what's happening in these other cities. It's accelerating the turnover of these properties. It's not impeding it. And typically what happens is they're required to make a disclosure that there's a lien on the property. And typically they're going to take that off of the contract price that they're willing to pay for that building. There's lots of these around. I can think of several right now that have been more than 5 years, and the banks, they're out-of-state banks, they don't move them because it's not worth their time and effort to do it. They just let the building sit there and rot.
And the city has the ability to negotiate something other than the total that's due if that's what moves it forward and gets the building, you know, back in a condition that isn't affecting the neighborhood in a negative way.
So I have a few specific items relative to the draft in section 12-277 under applicability. This follows on with some of the other suggestions. So a couple questions. So the first exemption in here is for members of the armed services on active duty, and that makes perfect sense to me relative to vacant buildings. But if this is an abandoned building, I'm not sure that there should be an exemption for that, because the member of the armed service isn't going to be the responsible party. So I think that should be clarified. In the next sentence, we have exemptions for lawful seasonal residences. And you might want to consider changing that to a seasonal dwelling, because there's no definition in our ordinance for a seasonal residence, but a seasonal dwelling, if it's occupied less than or equal to 6 months in the year. So, you know, the person goes to Florida half the year, they would be covered, but that would keep us in alignment with definitions elsewhere. And it wasn't clear to me where it says occupied periodically, what that means. It seems to me we should set a threshold level of the number of days in a year it would have to be occupied, and even if it's periodic, you know, it's sporadic off and on during the year. You know, if somebody comes 2 nights, I know there's one further down the road in the court process, but the one on Park Avenue, you know, they'd show up and they're there and then they're gone. If somebody shows up 2 nights in a year, are they going to be exempt because they claim they periodically occupied the building? And then I think, and this might be better in another, it might be in this section, but I do agree with Councilor Milks's point that we need to do something about constructive occupation. In other words, which was what I think Councilor Milks was getting at, which is, you know, the person, for whatever reason, business reasons, left, or it's an apartment building and they took a job someplace else in the country, but they're still paying rent. It's as if it's occupied. So I think that it would be helpful to have something about that. Just as a matter of drafting in 1279C, we use terms just like code. Some places we say code enforcement, some place code enforcement office. We should just conform all those. In 1279 fees and C, I know this will be moved out to the appendix, but we stop if they've undertaken the demolition permitting process. I think we should stop if they've undertaken a building process and they're getting a building permit. You know, maybe they've decided they're going to do renovations. We shouldn't, if they're making those steps, I don't think we should wait till it's occupied. I think, you know, we should suspend it just like we would for the demolition. And I think those are all the particular comments that I have. Other thoughts by the council? Councilor Mills?
Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree that with the suspension of I could see, you know, the benefits of the registration and the application for a vacant building. And perhaps if there is a business reason that there's maybe no charge for the registration of it, because there's a difference between a vacant and an abandoned building. Like
Right,
a vacant,
and they're defined.
yep, and they're defined in here. So if, you know, someone in good standing in the building is well taken care of, they get an exempt from any fees, or maybe they pay the one fee. And that's every 6 months they re-up and they pay the same fee. But if it was abandoned and the grass gets long and things stop, that's when the escalation starts to kick in, because if there is the examples of other places where it did become a motivation to turn the buildings over, because we don't want to have 5 years sitting there, which I've seen, and, because I bought them before after 5 years, and they're a mess, so, yeah, that's just some thoughts.
So maybe if it is, I think it was the term constructive occupation, that inspection might happen every 6 months, but if the building's being maintained to all of our standards, then there could be some exception for a fee.
Or if someone owns a house and they want to go there 1 day a year, and they own it and they keep it up and someone mows the lawn, like, who are we to tell them they can't live in their house 1 day a year and live 364 days in Florida?
That's the point I'd want to echo as well. It's really clear to me what an abandoned building is in the definition, and I think it's pretty clear and obvious. I think it's just with the vacant building. I personally don't believe it's, obviously we want a vacant building, even if no one's in it all year. I mean, we want that redeveloped, but I don't believe it's our function as municipal government to force property owners to do that, unless, of course, the vacant building is dangerous, is blight, it poses some sort of public risk. I see those criteria in the abandoned definition, but the vacant building definition is a little more vague. So I think we need to draw those lines very clearly, because I get it. We want to redevelop property, but if the city said to me, hey, you've got a house that's been vacant for a year and we're going to do X, Y, and Z, I'd say, I disagree. My house it's heated, it's secured, and I disagree.
Right, so I think, I agree with your point. That's not the typical case that the other cities are seeing, and I think the issue between vacant and abandoned is to be able to have eyes on the vacant building to make sure it doesn't get into the condition where it's so deteriorated. It's also important to know who to contact with these things, right? You know, if the water line breaks between the gate valve and the street and the house, and the water's shooting up out of the ground, who do you call? So perhaps a different way to do this would be thinking of a different fee structure between the vacant and abandoned, with a lower fee schedule with an earlier cap for vacant, that because one would assume that the level of effort code enforcement will have to put in for those types of buildings will be a lot less than the other ones where we're just trying to cover our costs of the inspection.
Yeah, I like that, and I think maybe for the vacant category, it's a fee that is commensurate with the, as you just said, commensurate with the costs of the inspection every 6 months, or perhaps there's the fire department checking in on it periodically, but totally a different category than the abandoned building.
Council Count?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really like and agree with these comments. Just to highlight, you might even have a third tier in there for the vacant building high impact, because I think the purpose of this really is to be able to identify those that are dangerous buildings, and you're already building that in, and so and those buildings might need more motivation. They're the more common example, as opposed to the exception that we want to protect against someone feeling like they're being pushed into occupancy. So,
Chief, did you have a comment?
Yeah, actually, as I was coming up, you really hit. I really would ask us to look at it almost through two lenses. One is the registry itself, and I think you articulated it really well. The registry for both vacant and abandoned is hugely important from an emergency response standpoint. We spend lots of hours trying to identify who do we contact for these issues. Sometimes preemptively, right? We see a problem with a building, we want to get it remedied, but sometimes at 2 a.m. trying to get it because it's affecting buildings around it and trying to get somebody responsible for them and all those types of things. So the registry is an important piece from my world around having updated contact information on a regular basis about who are we contacting. I think the second piece of this, and I think you highlighted that, Councilor Platts, was a separate role or a separate piece of the ordinance which is trying to incentivize reducing vacancy. But I just don't want to lose track of the registry, the importance of the registry piece around it. And I think you're heading down the right path now when you talk about the fee structure really being the mechanism that bridges those two, right? Maybe it's not penalty based to try to drive a change in vacancy, but that the fee structure supports the costs of us increased risk, increased surveillance, and all those types of things, and maintaining a registry database that's available to responders.
Other questions? Councilor Geary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I like the idea of this registry because it'll give you some sort of history of the building, the background, and if there's anything that happens and the fire or police have to go in, at least they'll know if it's abandoned and vacant, what they're going to be potentially up against. Because you don't know what that building was used for. You don't have any idea what is now stored in it. And if it's something that's highly combustive, I don't want to have one of our officers or our firemen or anybody else going in there getting injured by what they may not know that's in there.
Councilor Whiting.
Thank you. I was just going to say, it's good for administrative efficiency. This has been a problem the city's had for a long time, just trying to identify who is responsible for a building. And there's no incentive for these property owners, particularly when they're foreclosing banks or mortgage companies. There's no incentive for them to respond to phone calls from the city because that's going to cost them money. And they look at the property as probably marginal based on the fact that it's being foreclosed and it's probably in poor condition already, and then the bank doesn't want to pour more money, good money after bad, to remedy it. So the fine system is perfect hammer to change that dynamic.
Other questions or comments from the council?
This has been helpful. I would say that we have enough work to do that we shouldn't plan on coming back for a first reading. I think we should try to dial this in a little bit more based on your feedback, come back for a workshop and go from there.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So our next item is a report on the Lake Auburn Watershed Subsurface Wastewater Disposal System Inspection Program. Mr. Hediger.
Good evening. I'm gonna. I'm not gonna do anything. Oh, there we go. Okay. So, thank you, Mayor. Looking to give you guys an update on this septic inspection program. So, as you may recall, this was adopted last July, and one of the requirements is to do these inspections on a yearly basis based upon a certain map that we have. And what I'm going to do is actually pull that up just as a reminder. We've created this web page here for the public to go to that has some basic information about the septic inspection program, but right now I'm just going to jump to the map. And so you folks may recall this map, but right now this area in the pink here that I'm highlighting, that is the year one area. So we sent out notices to everybody mid-April, letting them know about the program, and we established a deadline of next July for them to submit a report. We did that in part with coordination with the Watershed Commission as they adopted their rules and policies back in February, and they were looking to get their funding in place as well. So they do have a program where they will reimburse up to $400 for inspections. We're coordinating with them. So when we do our notice, they do their notice to the same group of people as to when the inspections are going to be required and the eligibility for reimbursements. They're actually going to be having a workshop here in June just for those people in the red area or pink to get a better understanding of what's going on and how the program is going to work. So the first year is 57 property owners. There's 615 altogether. Next year will be about 80 properties as far as that notification process goes. Again, there's a $400 reimbursement process that you can be eligible for. You have to submit your report to code enforcement, and they'll take a look at it to make sure that that inspection passed or failed. There's a specific form from the state that we'll be looking for them to complete. If that looks good, then you can proceed to the commission and see if you're eligible for reimbursement there. Another requirement of the ordinance was limiting the number of dwelling units in the watershed. So you can't have more than 3 dwelling units per calendar year in the district. So the ordinance speaks to reporting the number of dwelling units constructed in the past year, the number that have been constructed since July 1, cumulative total, and at some point a determination as to whether or not any of this development is having an impact on the watershed. So since July of '24, there's only been one house altogether out there so far, so we don't have a lot of residential development occurring yet at this point. So the only other thing I guess I wanted to mention before opening it up for questions was, again, just to, in the event people are watching this at home, we have directed people to this website. There's a number of links on here. You can get right to the Watershed Commission site here. They have a very detailed information. They have the inspection form on here. They have a whole lengthy, long letter here that gives you all the details of what their program is about as well. So certainly the public can get more input there. And we've also provided links on here as to what the actual inspection report looks like. So this is the actual form that property owners will be expected to fill out. This is a state form, but it's satisfying us as far as what needs to be done. We've had a couple questions come to our office, as well as some to the commission, as to, if I had when is an inspection done? When is an inspection required? If I just bought the property and I just had one done this year, will we require an inspection? No, we'll honor anything that's happened in 2025, but if you did something in 2024, you're going to need to get an inspection done. There's also been questions about private lines. If you're not on a septic, but you have private lines going to your property, like a sewer line, are we going to require inspections of those as well? And yes, we are. So there's some mobile home parks and some other developments within the watershed that have private lines. And we're going to actually we'll use this form. It's not the ideal, because most people think of subsurface being, a septic system, a leach field, a holding tank. But when you look on this, it references lift stations, so there's certainly private lines that might have lift stations that connect to city sewer. We also talk somewhere on here, talks about piping. In any event, there's an inspection of the piping as well. So we'd want to know if there's any private lines that are potentially leaching into the ground, or in some cases, these lines are actually exposed. Or since I've been told we have some developments in town where there's actually sewer lines that are actually above ground. So obviously it's a new program. I've been working with the watershed. It's a learning curve for them as well. We're kind of like every few weeks we're like getting a new question and trying to figure out how to answer it and whatnot. So I expect round 2 we might have a little bit better handle as far as like frequently asked questions and what's going to be required and what's going to need to be tweaked, to the point where we may be coming back to you folks at some point with maybe potential amendments to make this run smoother or eliminate some gray areas. So with that, try to answer any questions.
Questions or comments from the council? Council Platt?
I was curious how many contractors are on the pre-approved septic inspector list that's referenced.
So I believe the commission noted, I think they had 4. Is this the right document that has it?
Honestly, that's fine. I just wanted to know that it was more than 2 or 3 to see that people had some choices on there.
That's a bit of a tricky question, so.
Yeah, as of right now, as shown on the screen, these are a list of qualified ones that the commission has looked at, but there are certainly other people out there that can do these inspections. So it's not a matter of, hey, any one of these 3, you're limited to those. If you can find someone who's qualified.
I was more thinking about the homeowner that has no idea where to start, and just so they can go online and get some information.
Yeah, so just to be clear, this program that LawPAC's running is an assistance program. It's not found any place in the ordinance. It has no bearing on somebody's responsibility to get this done. They can go to the state website, and there is a long list of certified inspectors, and they can pick any of them that they like from that list. Our ordinance only requires that they be certified. What Mr. Hediger just showed was the process LawPAC went through to engage active folks that would participate in their reimbursement program, and he has the list that you can get off the state website.
Exactly, so there's a link on our page that gets you to the state site, that gets you to this page, so I mean, there's, a couple hundred individuals out there that can provide these.
Yeah, and I should have probably elaborated on my question. It was in reference to the reimbursement, $400. I just want to make sure. I know sometimes, like, for example, even when I got my heat pump, I'm trying to figure out which, you get your municipal rebate, your state rebate, and I'm sitting there scratching my head for a day trying to figure out where do I send this stuff to. So it was just making sure that for those who wanted to participate in the program, it was very clear what their options are, and obviously there are more options as well if they could just find a qualified candidate. But thank you.
Other questions, comments from the council? Council Whiting.
Just a comment. I'm thinking, the other day we saw Fenderson at our neighbors and we said, oh yeah, we got to pump our septic tank. And it occurred to me that it might be useful for neighbors to team up, to hire people, especially, I'm not sure how many of these inspectors are local, but if there aren't that many local, it would make sense to bring in somebody and spend a day and maybe knock off a few properties that are in the particular zone that's required to have inspections. That would be, individually based, but I think it would be beneficial.
And if I recall correctly, the 3 that are participating in the Law Pack program are all within like 20, 25 miles of Auburn, I think.
They may be, I'd have to look again.
I would think if they knew that they had 3 of them to do in a day, there'd be some efficiency in their pricing.
So I just have a follow-up questions. I was a bit confused about the dates that you mentioned. So my understanding is that this ordinance took effect July 1st of 2024, and the year 1 cohort, their inspections are due to be completed by June 30th of 2025, regardless of when LawPac started their program. So I understand it took LawPac a long time, almost 9 months, to get their assistance program set up. So we sent letters out, Mr. Cousins will remember this, in the fall of 2024, the first notice, and we're supposed to send out notices a year ahead of time and 6 months ahead of time. So for this first group of 50 some odd, we sent the second notice in January telling them they had till June 30th. I'm assuming some of them will be delayed because I think a lot of people have been waiting for LawPac to get their program up and running to provide the financial assistance. But we should still be notifying those that haven't, in the first cohort, that haven't completed by June 30th that they're overdue. And we should be sending out in July the 1-year notice for the second group, because the second group's inspections are going to be due by June 30th of 2026. So I was a little confused because I think what you said earlier was we're sort of driving this off the March date when LawPac started their assistance program, but that's nowhere to be found in the ordinance.
That's accurate. We were trying to coordinate with LawPac and at the same time trying to stand up a new program that we didn't have until after the ordinance was adopted. So in April, sending those out, now knowing that there is a reimbursement program that was discussed a lot during the adoption process, but is nowhere in the ordinance, as you said. We were trying to coordinate all that information so people had all of that, but we are behind schedule based on that. But as you said, we can send the 1-year notices out for group 2 in July, and
right.
Then at the end of July of 26, we could be back on schedule with what the ordinance called for, but we are behind.
Well, in the first group, we should be sending a notice if you haven't received their HHE 220 by June 30th, we should look at those and just send them a notice that says, hey, you were supposed to have this done by June 30th. There's a difference between whether we're sending them a notice or taking an enforcement action, right? I mean, everybody understands these folks were waiting to defray their cost, right? That makes perfect sense, but we should still nudge them and get them going. Everyone would understand if you're not taking enforcement action right away on that first group because they really didn't start paying attention till March.
Yeah, we can certainly do that, and I think we have the added incentive of only having a reimbursement program that goes through December 31st, so that'll hopefully motivate people to get it done this summer. And
Other
then hopefully
questions?
that'll continue in future years, but we don't know that for sure yet. LAPAC will have to fund it
Right.
in the next budget year.
Other questions or comments by the council? Council Mill?
But, so are we notifying them so their first year expires June 30th, right? They have to have it done by June 30th. Are we notifying the next group on July 1st that they have, so it's 1 year notice on the beginning and 6 months?
Correct.
That's the plan, yeah.
Yeah.
And as the mayor mentioned, we have to remind people 6 months, so I mean, that was what we were thinking with the first group was that, you know, we were gonna be sending them out a reminder as well, but we could do the same thing. We could accomplish two things there, reminding them, and oh, by the way, there was this previous deadline, so.
And the
Hopefully this
incentive
time next
expires-
year, we'll be like closer to on task as far as the actual dates go.
And the incentive expires at the end of the term that they're supposed to get it done?
No.
We-
I don't
That might
think
get
so.
people moving.
Well, that's an interesting point, and we could ask LawPac about that.
Yeah, their document online talks about how the funding is going to the calendar year. So inspections in 2025 would be eligible for up to 2025. I don't know, to Eric's point, I don't even know what they have for funding available going forward, if that's even been
So
discussed.
that's because the Water District and LawPac are on a calendar year budget. The City of Lewiston obviously is on the same budget cycle we are. But my understanding is the Lewiston Water Sewer Department and the Auburn Water and Sewer District are going to be providing ongoing funding to LawPac for this program to provide financial assistance for the inspections. So I think the reason that right now they're talking about they have funding through December 31st is that's their fiscal year.
Gotcha.
Other questions or comments? No, thank you very much for the presentation. The council will be adjourned until 7 p.m. where we'll reconvene for the regular council meeting. The May 19th, 2025 Auburn City Council meeting will be called to order. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If we could have the councilors introduce themselves, starting with Councilor Geary.
Good evening, I'm Belinda Gary, City Councilor at Large.
Good evening, Rick Whiting, Ward 1 City Councilor.
Good evening, Tim Cowan, Ward 2 City Councilor.
Good evening, Steve Milks, City Council Ward 3.
Good evening, Jeff Hyman, Mayor.
Good evening, Ben Weisner, City Councilor, Ward 4.
Good evening, Leroy Walker, Ward 5.
Good evening, Adam Platts at Large.
Phil Kroll, City Manager.
First item of business tonight is the consent agenda. There's 3 items on the consent agenda this evening, all appointments to the Age-Friendly Community Committee, appointing Councilor Geary, Councilor Walker, and Jan Byron. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Weisner and seconded by Councilor Milks. Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? And Madam Clerk, for the record, Councilor Geary and Councilor Walker are recusing themselves for conflict of interest on this item. The next item will be approval of the minutes of the May 5th, 2025 regular City Council meeting. Are there any errors or corrections? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Seconded.
Moved by Councilor Walker, seconded by Councilor Platts. Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? 7 having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative. The motion is adopted. The next item is communication regarding the school budget validation referendum election. The clerk reports that absentee ballots are now available for all wards will be voting in Auburn Hall on June 10th. Polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And Madam Clerk, absentee, they can vote in person in the clerk's office at this point, correct?
Yes, that is correct. The last day to request an absentee ballot will be June 5th.
Great, thank you very much. It's important for people to come and vote on the school budget validation, to let us know that their thoughts and to indicate whether the process will continue with a validation referendum vote. The next item is a proclamation honoring Maine Arbor Week. I'll read the proclamation. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees, and this holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas on May 18th to May 24th, 2025 is Maine Arbor Week, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, provide life-giving oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now, therefore, I, Jeffrey D. Harmon, Mayor of the City of Auburn, by virtue of the authority vested in me, do hereby proclaim May 18th to May 24th, 2025, as a celebration of Maine Arbor Week in the City of Auburn. And I urge all citizens to celebrate Maine Arbor Week and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. And further, I urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations. And I would invite the chair of our Forestry Subcommittee, Forestry Working Group, has a short presentation.
Thank you all for supporting Maine Arbor Week. As you may know, the issuing of the proclamation is one of the requirements for Auburn to qualify for Tree City USA certification. And we just finished our 22nd year so certified. We have an event planned for tomorrow. We're having a working day up at the nursery, which will serve as our Tree City USA event. Audubon is up there. We're going to do some work to experiment with the ability to produce root-free stock to take more trees out down the road. And we're also in the process over the next few weeks of using a grant to put up a deer fence, signage, and some road work and drainage to improve the nursery's productivity. And we hope to have an open house sometime in June for that. We also have an exhibition at the library right inside the front door around Maine Arbor Week. So you can encourage people to go see that if they're so inclined. We had a special event last year that I think Mr. Walker will recognize. We had to take down an old sycamore tree on Pulsiver Street in New Auburn because of potential for property damage to one of the nearby houses. That tree was kind of special in Auburn because as best we could figure, it goes back almost to 1900. Pulsiver Street was laid out in the 1880s, and we suspect that tree and a second one was planted when that neighborhood was developed. So we thought when we took the tree down, we should do something to memorialize it. And Noel Skelton, our arborist, put together some information on the tree itself. They could survive as much as 500 or 600 years. This particular tree was last measured in the 2016 street tree inventory. It was 60 inches in diameter and nearly 100 feet tall. We were able, because of taking it down in November, to collect some seed pods. And Noel and Steve Murch, who's the arborist over in Lewiston, and Jeremy Lavertu, who's also a member of the board and works for Bates, have been successful in germinating a few of those seeds. So hopefully in 2 or 3 years, we'll be able to get some more sycamores out on our streets, put them into the nursery, and take them from there. We're hoping this will serve as a display that we can put somewhere in the city, maybe in room 204. The last piece of that is a bowl that Tom Raymond made out of the wood of the tree, and I'll pass that around. It's kind of special. Tom is a craftsman out of Damascotta. He happens to be my wife's uncle, and in return for some wood, he agreed to make that bowl. He's been making bowls for 50 years or so. That's number 1741 of the ones he's made, and he's still actively doing that at the honorable age of 92. So I hope we can get this displayed someplace in City Hall to memorialize that special tree, and we'll try to go some more overnight. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Griswold. We'll get these set up, perhaps in 204, out in the cabinet in the hall here. So the next item is a proclamation for the National Public Works Week. I'll read the proclamation. Whereas public work professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are vitally important to sustainable and resilient communities, high quality of life, and the well-being of the people of Auburn, and whereas dedicated public works professionals at all levels are responsible for rebuilding, improving, maintaining, and protecting our nation's transportation, natural resources, solid waste systems, public buildings, roadways, parks, fields, cemeteries, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens, and whereas it is important for residents, civic leaders, businesses, and children in Auburn to gain knowledge of and maintain an ongoing understanding of the importance of public works operations and programs. And whereas the Auburn Public Works Department remains Maine's first and only nationally accredited public works agency, maintaining the highest level of professional excellence. And whereas the Auburn Public Works Department's team of highly trained and dedicated staff meets and exceeds the best practices, policies, and missions of the organization. And whereas 2025 marks the 65th annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association, now therefore I, Jeffrey D. Harmon, do hereby designate this week of May 18th to 24th, 2025 as National Public Works Week in Auburn. I encourage all residents to join the Auburn Public Works in activities and events designed to pay tribute to our public work professionals and to recognize the substantial contributions they make in protecting our public health, safety, and advancing quality of life for all. And I would point out that this coming Saturday, the 31st, there will be an open house at 2 weeks, I'm sorry, thank you. But it is May 31st, correct? Yeah, okay, May 31st, 9 to 1 at the Public Works Garage on Grace Lawn Road. There's going to be all kinds of activities. Stop by, see Public Works, great place to bring the kids, touch a truck. They're going to have big sand pile there to dig around in, and I know everybody enjoys it. So stop by in 2 weeks on the 31st. So the next item is the first open session of the evening. Any members of the public that would like to address the council on an item that's not on tonight's agenda, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any, the open session will be closed. We'll move on to unfinished business. The first item is Resolve 0105052025. Adopting the appropriations resolved municipal budget for fiscal year 2026. This will be a second reading. Is there a motion?
Motion to move.
Moved by Councilor Walker.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Cowan. If there's any member of the public that would like to address the council relative to the annual appropriations resolve, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any, public comment will be closed. Discussion by the council. Is the council ready for the question? Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor?
Roll call.
Excuse me. Thank you very much. The vote will be by roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Counselor Whiting?
Yes.
Counselor Cowan?
Yes.
Counselor Milks?
Yes?
Counselor Weisner?
Yes.
Counselor Walker?
Yes.
Counselor Platts?
Yes.
Counselor Gary?
No.
6 having voted in the affirmative and 1 in the negative, the motion is adopted. The next item is Order 4005052025, authorizing the city's general obligation bonds in the amount of $11,762,700 to finance the city's FY26 capital improvement program. This is a second reading and a public hearing. Is there a motion?
Motion to adopt as presented.
Moved by Councilor Whiting.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Milks. The public hearing will be open. Any member of the public who would like to address the council relative to the FY26 general obligation bonds, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any, the public hearing will be closed. Discussion by the council. The council ready for the question? Vote will be by roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Counselor Cowan?
Yes.
Counselor Milks?
Yes?
Counselor Weisner?
Yes.
Counselor Walker?
Yes.
Counselor Platts?
Yes.
Counselor Gary?
No.
Counselor Whiting?
Yes.
6 having voted in the affirmative and 1 in the negative, the motion's adopted. We'll move on to new business. The first item is Order 4905192025, a credit enhancement agreement for 63 Academy Street, the Charles Jordan House. Is there a motion?
So
Motion to
moved.
approve.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Walker, seconded by Councilor Geary. As background for members of the public that might be here or watching. So the Charles Jordan House is a historic residence at 63 Academy Street. It was used by the LeBrun family for many, many years as a boarding house that included residents of the city as well as people returning to the community from incarceration. Some number of years ago, there was an arson incident there that damaged the building. It could no longer be occupied. The The owners reached an agreement with a developer and a nonprofit group to renovate this building to use as a 12-unit prisoner reentry house, so basically no change of use. The project is being financed through a combination of Maine housing money and historic preservation tax credits, which leads to the request, as we usually have for subsidized housing, for a credit enhancement agreement. Mr. Holmes, if you want to come up, so is there, is there a motion?
I would move to adopt this as presented.
Moved by Counsel Whiting, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by
I think you
Counsel-
already called for the motion, Mr.
Mayor,
Mayor.
Mayor, I already have a motion by
I
Councilor
did
Walker.
already?
Yep.
Okay, sorry, thank you. So, Mr. Holmes?
Just to remind, it's public hearing as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if there's any questions, I can answer them. I know that the packet, I think, was pretty clear. This is basically refunding 100% of the taxes that they would pay through the end of the TIF 10, which is about 6 years. The reason we're doing 100% is because there's only 6 years left in that TIF. The other alternative would have been to pull it out and create a new TIF zone, and the entity really will be becoming a nonprofit as soon as the tax credits are recouped. So as a financing option for the developer, this works out pretty well because the timeline on those historical tax credits is 5 years as well.
We'll open the public hearing. Any member of the public who'd like to address the council on this item, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any, the public hearing will be closed. Discussion by the council. Council Whiting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to look at the history of this property. I mean, it's on the National Register of Historic Places. Had a fire. I believe it was an arson, a horrible thing. At one point, code enforcement was in here looking at a demolition. The developer has been working on this for 6 or 7 years, maybe more. Very difficult project, but very worthwhile. As you drive into Auburn, coming on Washington Street North, on the crest of the hill, you can see the Barker Mill cupola, and you can see the cupola on this building, the tower on this building. A very handsome building. I believe it may have been on the most endangered list for Maine preservation at one time. It's a one-of-a-kind property, and it's great that we can help with the restoration of this property at this time.
Other questions or comments from the council? Council Howell.
Just to add to Councilor Whiting's comments, it just what struck me in the summary provided by Mr. Holmes is without this approach, it would likely have to be demolished. And so I think this is really it's important. It's a historic building, and it's being used for the same purpose that it had before, which is a nice thing. So I am glad that we can help this, and that the Maine Prisoner Advocacy Coalition was able to find a good partnership to make this work.
Other questions or comments by the council? Council ready for the question? Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? 7 having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative. The motion is adopted. The next item is Order 5005192025, an omnibus TIF number 33 for the Auburn Lewiston Airport airplane hangars. Is there a motion?
Motion to move.
Moved by Councilor Walker.
Seconded.
Seconded by Councilor Platts. Mr. Holmes, do you want to provide an overview of this one? And Mr. Labonte is here as well if there's questions about the hangars.
So as far as from the TIF point of view, this is creating an omnibus TIF, which really allows the city to have multiple credit enhancement agreements within one TIF. We've identified this area of the airport. It's one parcel and then a portion of the entire parcel of the airport So we've done our best to work with everybody to get that laid out as best we can. The intention will be there'll be 4 box hangers, I'm going to call them. Mr. Labonte can explain better what they would be, and 3 T hangers. One of the T hangers will actually be built by the city if we can make this all happen with a congressionally directed spending that's on its way, hopefully. And the others will be by individual developers. So the credit enhancement will be the same for each of them moving forward. It's basically the recoup of $125,000 towards the development of each individual hangar. And that is basically able to get this project to move forward, because the first person has to do a lot of the work. So, any questions beyond that? It's a 30-year TIF, same as the standard. And again, they get 100% of their money back. Depending on when those come online, will generate enough money to pay them back. And then there's an estimated amount of money that will go to the city after that is done.
So we'll open the public hearing on this item. Any member of the public who'd like to address the council relative to this omnibus TIF, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Seeing none, the public hearing will be closed. Discussion by the council. Council Platt.
Thank you. My question possibly could be for Jonathan to answer, but what is $1 million to $1.5 million hangar? What can you put inside of that? Are we talking an Elite Airways jet or a single prop airplane? What goes in these buildings of that size?
So for $1 million to $1.5 million, sort of all in, including site work, any building design plus the building, probably between a 6,000 to 8,000 square foot hangar, which could store single piston aircraft, 4 to 6. There are some prospective tenants that have thought about basing small jets at the airport. Obviously that would be a viable option as well, and maybe then an additional single piston. So the way we permitted the box hangar development, you could build up to 4 80 by 80, but if someone built a smaller hangar, the next one can be bigger. So there's some flexibility with the sites as well.
So again, approximation, it's safe to say that each one of these $1 million to $1.5 million developments with $125,000 enhancement back could harbor a fuel-hungry jet or several less fuel-hungry propeller planes. I'm just trying to wrap my head around what kind of return there might be for the things that you're investing in over there, fuel sales, et cetera.
Yeah, the goal is to build an ecosystem. So the airport needs ground lease revenue to be able to maintain the infrastructure. We need fuel sale revenues, fuel sales to drive revenues, and ultimately perhaps help us to privatize that, and then to attract operators like mechanics or flight schools, the ability to get your private pilot, move your way up through, maybe buy an aircraft. You then want to be based at the airport you learned at. So we're trying to sustain that momentum. We're confident this is going to help us do that.
Other questions or comments from the council? The council ready for the question? Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? 7 having voted in the affirmative and none in the negative, the motion's adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is Order 5105192025, initiating referral to the Planning Board of proposed amendment of Chapter 60 zoning regarding general business and multifamily suburban district density requirements. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Moved by Councilor Walker.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Cowan. Just as background for the council, the item before you tonight is just to transmit the proposed language to the planning board for their review and recommendation. Once they make a recommendation, they'll send it back to the council. We'll then have a work session and the outcome of that in order, so council will have ample opportunity to review and debate the content. If there's any member of the public who'd like to address the council on this item, please approach the podium and provide your name and address.
Stephen Beal, 575 Johnson Road. I would just comment briefly that this is a good proposal. I've reviewed it. There has been a lot of problem with the density definitions in the general business district, which in turn adopts the multifamily suburban component as its residential part of what can be done residentially in the general business district. So the multifamily suburban ordinance not only affects those districts, but it also affects the industrial district, the general business district, as the method by which residences can be built in that district. And the ordinance, as it presently stands, is in a kind of an awkward posture because it has differing densities in terms of number of dwelling units per acre, depending on how those units are housed, whether it's in a single-family building, two-family, or multifamily. The densities are different for all three, which drives developers crazy and has caused this matter to be continued now 4 times in the last 4 months by the planning board because of this lack of definitive method of approaching how a developer would propose to develop a particular parcel. Thank you.
Is there any other member of the public that'd like to address the council? Please approach the podium, provide your name and address. Not seeing any. Public comment is closed. Discussion by the council. Council ready for the question? Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? 7 having voted in the affirmative and none in the negative, the motion is adopted. We will move on to reports. For the mayor's report,
One more item.
no, okay, sorry. Yeah. The next item is Order 5205192025, adopting bylaws creating the Auburn Community Development Corporation, CDC. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Platt, seconded by Councilor Wisner. As background, this is the item that the council has had several workshops on regarding the creation of a new community development corporation. If any member of the public would like to address the council on this item, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any. Public comment will be closed. Discussion by the council. Council ready for the question? Vote will be by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? 6 having voted in the affirmative and 1 in the negative, the motion is adopted. So now we'll move on to reports. So for the mayor's report, thank you very much to the city staff and the school department. They hosted Maine Municipal Association for a day last week at Edward Little. Very informative session. There were a number of elected officials and city staff from cities and towns, not just nearby, some quite a ways away. One from Aroostook County that came, and it's a great opportunity to have all of the director level staff talk about their programs and answer questions from people from the municipalities. I also attended the Salt and Light Open House. Members of the public and council will recall recently Salt and Light received planning board approval for to open a facility on Hampshire Street to provide a whole variety of youth programs there. So they had a great open house, very well attended. I think it'll be very beneficial to the neighborhood. The Home for Good, which is now the state program name for Housing First, the kickoff was last week. I attended that with staff and all of the partners, Auburn Housing, Spurwink, and Developers Collaborative. It was a great meeting. All the other 4 communities were there, and really set everybody up to begin their project here in the near term. And I'd like to thank all of the city staff that worked on the Lobster Festival, communications, public works, police, fire. They had great music. All the vendors were there. It was very unfortunate. It was kind of a cold, drizzly day, so we got less turnout than we expected, but I think the folks that attended enjoyed it, and as we move forward to our next one, hopefully we'll have a little better weather. Councilor Geary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't exactly have a report, but if Facebook is right for a change, it said that you had a birthday today. And if that's true, I'd like to wish you a happy birthday.
Well, that would be, Facebook's right this time, Councilor Geary. I am having a birthday today, so thank you very much. Councilor Whiting?
Thank you. I'd like to recognize Anaya Eggy, our student rep, top 10 finish at Edward Little. And also to recognize the 30th anniversary of Healthy Androscoggin, of which our city manager was a founding member way back when it was just trying to figure out what to do with tobacco settlement funds and promote public health in the Lewiston Auburn area.
Councilor Cowan.
And to add to that, our Councilor Whiting was instrumental in helping Auburn's housing authority be the first authority in the nation to go tobacco-free. So, third, sorry, one on the top. So that was some of the earliest achievements of Healthy Androscoggin. So that was great. I also just, in addition to National Public Works, I wanted to highlight that it's National EMS Week too. So let's just, thank to many, many people in both of those groups.
Councilor Mills?
Nothing tonight.
Councilor Wise?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happy birthday, and I was able to attend Lobster Festival, so thank you to the city and staff for that. Great event, even though the weather was not on our side, but look forward to next year. That's all I have. Thank you.
Councilor Walker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to put a big thank you out to all the people that came for the free clothing that the Age-Friendly Committee put on at 121 Mill Street. We had over 150 people. We probably gave away about 20,000 pieces of different clothing, blankets, and everything else that was kindly donated to us, so we could do that. Also, I'd like to say that Phil Crow will be at the United New Auburn Association meeting at Rowley's Diner the last Tuesday of this month. So please show up, bring your questions, and don't be shy. He can answer anything. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Platt?
Thank you. I don't have much other than to reiterate the Auburn Public Works open house on the 31st, but also to note that Scott Holland graciously invited the Conservation Committee's pollinator and seed handout group to be there. I think we'll be tabling with some information on that. I know we've talked a lot about the pollinator garden, but this is a great opportunity for the public to come out and meet the folks who have put that together. In addition to Public Works, who will be there, I'll be there. I think it'll be a great day. Thank you.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few things. It's coming up to that construction season time, so I'll give you an update on a few projects we have underway. Obviously, Center Street, anybody who is driving through Auburn knows Center Street construction is underway. That is a long-term project, so we'll be carrying that out through the entire summer. So there's no end in sight on that, so just be mindful of that and take the appropriate detours when necessary. Stetson Road, the culvert, the reason for that being closed is the culvert collapse. And so that project was awarded last week. So that project is moving forward. Many of you saw the fire that took place here on Court Street with the project that was taking place there on lining that sewer line. That is currently rescheduled for about the next 4 to 6 weeks before that one there gets underway again. They had to reorder the lining that they're using for that pipe. The street scan project is complete. So many of you may have driven around the city and saw their vehicle, looked like a Google Map vehicle that was driving around. But all of the streets have been completed. It takes about 3 months to compile that data. So we will be scheduling an update to the council once that data is completed, and that'll be compiling the conditioning of all of our roads. Construction projects, Hersey Hill paving will be this week. Blanchard is under construction, Hillsdale is under construction. Merrill Road, if you've traveled that, you've noticed that the tree cutting is completed. As soon as the paving crew is done at Hersey Hill, that team will then move to Merrill Road and get Merrill Road underway. We also have, Council Walker had asked about Main Street at the last meeting. We did reach out to DOT. It's scheduled. I don't have a date, and but it's in the queue is the update that we have. And then also starting this week was the Minot Avenue study. The Minot Avenue study goes from Hotel Row to the bypass, and the Court Street study goes from Minot Ave to Minot Avenue. Those studies will take a year in compiling those studies, and so we'll be getting a report back around this time next year on those two studies and the work that's been done there. Just an update on Engine 2. That project is moving along very well. We will be hopefully seeing some movement there come July as that project gets underway. The 7 Chestnut Street demolition, you'll see that there's still a pad there. We're waiting for clearance from DEP to be able to start moving that and getting that area cleaned up. The Pal Center is on track. We should be completed by the 1st of July. So that project is moving along very well. And last item is folks will be receiving a postcard, kind of looking like this, in the mail soon. Part of that postcard has to do with the comp plan, and so we're really looking for people to get involved. Subscribe to email updates, post any ideas on our ideal wall rather. It's an interactive map. You can pinpoint where you have an idea for the city. Attend meetings at comp plan committees. The information will be on there for that. You can also scan the QR code that's on there or go to the website and take the survey that'll be made available. The survey closes June 6th, so we really encourage folks to participate and get your information known. So that's it, Mayor.
Thank you. We'll move on to the second open session of the evening. Any member of the public who'd like to address the council on an item that's not on tonight's agenda, please approach the podium and provide your name and address. Not seeing any. The open session will be closed. There's no executive session scheduled for this evening. Is there a... Council Walker.
Yeah, I'd just like to mention one more that the city manager forgot, so we'll ask him the question later, but I'll give the answer right now. Soper Mills Road, it was all completed there except for maybe some of the aprons. Instead of the people doing 40 and 45, now they're doing 70 and 75. So it's a good job, no more bumps. So you're not going to go off the road because of the bumps, but the speed may kill you. So be careful.
Thank you, Council Walker. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Moved by Council Platt, seconded by Council Wisner. All in favor? The council will be adjourned.
You share a birthday with Kelsey.